"We wish you were never born." My mother said it, and everyone stayed silent. Graduation day is supposed to feel like arrival, like the end of a long tunnel where everybody finally sees you standing in the light. I remember walking across that stage with my name echoing through the speakers, my chest tight, my hands shaking just a little. Bachelor's degree. First in my family. Black robe, tassel swinging, future wide open. They clapped. They always clapped. But clapping isn't the same as pride. I learned that early. That night, we sat at a long table in a mid-range restaurant, the kind my family liked because it looked expensive without actually being expensive. Plates clinked. Glasses filled. My graduation cap rested on my knee like something fragile I didn't trust the table with. I noticed things I hadn't before. The way my aunt kept glancing at my mother before speaking. The way my uncle avoided my eyes completely. The way my mother smiled. Tight, controlled, like she was holding something back. I tried to ignore it. I told myself I was reading too much into it. I always did that. Ever since I was a kid, I'd learned to question my instincts before questioning them. Learned that my feelings were usually inconvenient. "So," my uncle said, raising his glass halfway, "college graduate." Everyone laughed politely. I smiled too. Smiles had always been my armor. Inside I waited. For warmth. For acknowledgement. For someone to say they were proud without adding conditions. I thought this night would finally buy me that. I was wrong. My mother cleared her throat. And when she did, something in the air shifted. Like when a storm decides it's done waiting. Some words don't need shouting to destroy a room. My mother didn't stand up. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize it. She just looked down at her plate, then up at me and said it like a casual observation. "Sometimes," she said, "we wish you were never born." The fork froze halfway to my aunt's mouth. The waiter slowed his step. My cap slipped off my knee and hit the floor, soft but loud enough for everyone to notice. I didn't. That's the part that scares people when they hear this story. I didn't cry. I didn't shout. I didn't ask her to repeat herself. I just sat there, still, like my body had decided to protect itself by shutting something off. Nobody corrected her. Nobody said, "That's too far." Nobody said, "You don't mean that." Nobody said my name. Silence wrapped around the table like agreement. I looked around slowly, memorizing faces. Some looked down. Some stared. Some looked relieved. As if something heavy had finally been said out loud, so they didn't have to carry it anymore. I smiled. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't shock. It was understanding. Because in that moment, everything made sense. And the scariest thing about me that night wasn't the hurt in my chest. It was how calm I felt once the truth arrived. The ride home was quiet. Too quiet. My mother hummed softly, like nothing had happened. The radio stayed low. My uncle talked about traffic. My aunt scrolled her phone. Nobody apologized. Nobody explained. That's when I learned something important. Cruelty doesn't always come with guilt. Sometimes it comes with relief. That night, I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling, replaying my life backward. The birthdays where my gifts were smaller. The punishments that lasted longer for me than anyone else. The way my achievements were met with "don't get ahead of yourself." I thought I was imagining it. I wasn't. The sentence at the table didn't come from nowhere. It came from years of quiet resentment I'd been too busy surviving to name. I stopped texting friends back. Stopped posting. Stopped asking questions. Instead, I listened. I listened to how they spoke about me when they thought I wasn't paying attention. I listened to the assumptions they made about my future, about my debt, my dependence, my limits. And the more I listened, the clearer it became. They never planned for me to succeed freely. They planned for me to succeed under them. Pain hits different when it finally makes sense. I remembered being 8, bringing home a perfect report card. My mother nodded once and asked why I hadn't joined more activities like my cousin. At 10, I broke a glass by accident and was grounded for a week. At 12, my cousin wrecked a car and got a lecture. At 16, I got into college early. My mother asked if I could handle it. I wasn't unloved. I was managed. There's a difference. Love nurtures growth. Management controls outcomes. They needed me to succeed just enough to be useful, but not enough to outgrow the family hierarchy. That night, something in me grieved. Not for the words said at the table, but for the boy who kept trying to earn love that was never meant to be unconditional. And grief does something strange. Clears your vision. I stopped reacting. I started watching. Silence isn't weakness when it's chosen. I played my role perfectly. I thanked them for dinner. I smiled at family gatherings. I accepted advice I no longer needed. Inside, I counted every assumption they made about my finances, every mention of help I supposedly needed, every time my future was spoken about like it belonged to them. One night, I overheard a conversation I wasn't meant to hear. My mother said, "He'll come around. He always does." That's when I knew. They didn't see a man. They saw a pattern. And patterns are meant to be controlled. They thought they were pulling me forward. They were holding me back. I reviewed paperwork quietly. Loan documents, internship agreements, emails I'd been CC'd on but never read carefully. That's when I saw it. They thought they funded my education. They didn't know about the scholarship appeal I filed alone. The emergency grant I qualified for quietly. The job offer I'd already signed, set to start 2 weeks after graduation. Their leverage was imaginary. And once you see the strings clearly, cutting them doesn't hurt. I didn't confront them. I made a move. They never planned for me to think ahead. I moved my start date up, transferred my accounts, signed a lease in another city. I didn't announce it. I let it reveal itself naturally. The tone shifted. Suddenly, they asked questions. Suddenly, they praised me publicly. Suddenly, pride appeared, too late and too loud. Control was slipping, and they felt it.
When the first real buyers came through, Priya materialized as if summoned by a sense of proprietorship. She called me Mom, in a tone that tasted false, and asked the visitors if they had any questions about family history. It was a hostile hospitality, claiming stories to anchor her place. The agent, Hannah, handled it with trained calm and later told me, off the record, that Priya had tried to tell the buyers the house had always belonged to their family. Hannah's face was sympathetic when she said it. Sympathy is the currency of those who witness the small cruelties of close people. At dinner that night, Daniel's voice was tight. He accused me gently, "You're making this harder than it needs to be." It struck me how often people mistake boundary for battle. I had planned to sell to reclaim peace, not provoke war. Yet their resistance lit a stubbornness in me I hadn't expected. I began to keep a record of every confrontation, dates, times, who said what. Mrs. Olson even helped me write down the details when my hands shook. The house, which had once been a slow comfort, had become a stage where I would quietly prove I belonged there. Cliffhanger, the morning after, a plain white envelope arrived under the door, a note from someone who had been at the viewing.
I didn't raise my voice. I raised a boundary. I told them calmly that I'd be moving, that I appreciated what they tried to do, that I wouldn't be available the same way anymore. My mother asked why. I looked at her and said, "Because you already told me how you felt." She tried to deny it. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. Truth doesn't require permission. They wished I was never born. So I let the version of me that needed their approval die. I kept the rest. I didn't destroy them. I didn't shame them publicly. I didn't scream. I lived well. And sometimes, that's the quietest revenge of all.